Melissa thought the picture she took that day was so funny, she decided to post it on her Instagram as a way of getting likes. That same evening, she hears loud knocks on her door, and when she opened it, she was greeted by a whole SWAT team. What was going on? She didn't understand what she had done wrong for these men to just take her without explanation. Could it have something to do with the picture of the van she posted? Melissa sat in the back of the SWAT van, accompanied by 3 men. When she asked if taking her had to do with the post on Instagram, one of the officers simply nodded his head. Her mind started racing, and she began to have a panic attack. Her breath picked up, she became lightheaded, and she was out before she could do something. When she woke up, she wasn't in the van anymore. She looked around and thought she might be in jail, but it looked different. A man entered the room and tied her to a chair. "Tell me where it is," he said. "Tell you where what is?" Will Melissa ever see the daylight again? But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Melissa loved posting on her Instagram account. She actually made a living out of it, with millions of people following her. She usually posted her day-to-day life or fashion-related photos, but today was different because she saw something so unusual, she just had to share, even if it would raise some eyebrows. Melissa was on her way home from a friend when she suddenly drove behind a white truck. That wasn't very unusual, but what was on the truck certainly was. It had a sentence on the back that made her do a double take. She almost didn't believe it until she read it aloud. "This container transports a disease which has no cure." Melissa couldn't believe her eyes. Why was this truck even on the road? She kept driving behind it, even though it made her miss her exit. And when they reached a slow part, she quickly grabbed her phone and took a picture, but she later wished she didn't. She initially took the picture to show to her friends and family, but she later realized how serious this could be. So, she posted it on her social media without thinking much of it. She only wanted to help people by informing them about what was really going on in the world. But it backfired in her face. She captioned the picture with, "Can't believe I just drove past a biohazard. Watch out, people. Scary things are happening in the world." And as soon as she posted the picture, her phone started to explode with comments and direct messages. Later that evening, when Melissa got home, she finally had the time to read through her messages. There were many different reactions to her photo. Some were positive, and some were negative, which was normal to her. But there was one comment that stood out to her, and not in a good way. "You'll wish you never posted this," it read, with a skull emoji at the end. Melissa quickly deleted the comment and blocked the person. That night, Melissa lay in bed thinking about the comment. It made it very hard for her to fall asleep. It looked like the noises were fading away, and Melissa was finally able to close her eyes. But it didn't last long. A loud bang thundered through her house. She shot up in bed but had to close her eyes again as she looked straight into multiple flashlights. What the hell was happening? A large SWAT team infiltrated her house and surrounded her bed. Panic shot through Melissa's body as she tried to understand what was happening. Melissa eventually got up, and 2 men dragged her back to the van. Melissa was overcome by shock as she sat in the back of the SWAT van. 3 men accompanied her in the back, but none of them said a word. They didn't explain to her why they had taken her or answer any of her questions. They didn't even tell her where they were going. This experience was very traumatic to her, and it wasn't over yet. Then suddenly, everything sunk in, and she started to have a panic attack, and before she knew it, she was out. When she opened her eyes again, she was out of the van and in a white room. There was nothing in the room except a hard metal bed. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't understand why they had taken her from her bed in the middle of the night. She banged on the door for what felt like an eternity when finally, she heard footsteps. Melissa took a few steps back and looked at the man walking into the room. The man dragged a chair behind him and put it in the middle of the room. He bound her hands and feet to the chair as she struggled to break free, but it was impossible. She looked at him with anger in her eyes. "What is going on? Why am I here?" she yelled at the man, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "You know why you're here," the man answered. "You only have to tell me where it is, and we will let you go. Simple as that." Melissa was confused by his answer. Where it is? Where what is? She had no idea what he was talking about. "Oh, don't play dumb, girl. We know you have it," leaving her alone again for now. When he finally realized his tactics weren't working on her, He left the room again, but he didn't untie her. Oh, great! She tried to wiggle her way out of the chair, but nothing worked. Then she tried something she had seen in a movie. She shifted her weight from front to back and braced herself as she dropped to the floor, shattering the chair. The room was pretty empty, so she couldn't hide if the man returned. In the dimly lit room, she crouched behind the remnants of the chair, her heart pounding. She knew that the element of surprise was her only weapon against the unknown man who held her captive. The moment of reckoning arrived as Melissa heard the door handle turn. Adrenaline surged through her veins as she readied herself to spring into action. The door creaked open, and the man stepped inside, unknowingly walking into Melissa's trap. With a sudden burst of strength and determination, Melissa lunged at the man, catching him off guard. The element of surprise worked in her favor as she grappled with her captor. Their struggle filled the room, and Melissa knew that her only chance of escape lay in overpowering. With her captor momentarily subdued, Melissa fled from the room, entering a labyrinth of dark corridors. Amid the dark corridors, Melissa stumbled upon an unexpected sight, a control room filled with monitors and switches. While exploring the eerie facility, Melissa came across other detainees. Their faces were a mix of confusion, fear, and relief to see another human being. In the company of the other detainees, stories of their abductions began to unfold. Each tale was different, yet they all centered on seemingly harmless online activities that had led to their capture. Melissa felt a sense of camaraderie and realized that they needed to pool their knowledge and resources to escape their captors. With newfound allies by her side, Melissa's inner strength blossomed. The fear that once gripped her began to recede, replaced by a fierce resolve. Melissa was ready to face her captors, no matter how ominous they appeared. The tension in the control room mounted as the captor returned. Melissa and the other detainees exchanged knowing glances, ready to confront the enigmatic figure. Amid the confrontation, Melissa took a bold step and began negotiating with her captor. She demanded answers, refusing to be intimidated any longer. The captor's responses hinted at a covert operation shrouded in secrecy. Melissa pressed for details, uncovering a web of intrigue and government involvement. It became clear that her captors were part of something far bigger, and their intentions remained veiled in secrecy. As the captor's words unraveled, a sinister agenda emerged. It was a carefully orchestrated operation aimed at exposing the potential dangers of misinformation and social media manipulation. Melissa's seemingly innocuous social media post had triggered a series of events intended to prove the consequences of online actions. The captors believed their actions served a larger purpose, leaving Melissa and the detainees to grapple with the gravity of their situation. With the truth unfolding, Melissa's resistance continued to grow. She was no longer a helpless captive. She had become a vocal adversary. Melissa's abduction was part of a larger experiment aimed at exposing the vulnerabilities in society and the role of online actions in exacerbating these issues. The captors emphasized the real-world consequences of misinformation spread through social media. They cited instances where false information had led to panic and chaos, causing harm to individuals and communities. Melissa came to understand the weight of her actions, even if unintentional, and the broader impact of the online world. In their captivity, Melissa and the other detainees hatched a plan. They decided to leverage their collective knowledge of social media to form an online movement. Their goal was to raise awareness about the dangers of misinformation and the government's involvement in their predicament. Together, they believed they could challenge the captors and seek help from the outside world. The detainees utilized their captors' own tactics against them. Through coded messages and anonymous social media accounts, they began disseminating the truth about their abduction and the government's covert operation. The online movement gained momentum as supporters rallied behind their cause, drawn by the captors' audacious experiment. As their online movement gained traction, the captors grew increasingly frustrated. Their carefully laid plans were unraveling before their eyes, and they struggled to regain control of the narrative. The tension between the captors and the detainees intensified, culminating in a high-stakes showdown. With their captors distracted by the growing movement, Melissa and the other detainees seized an opportunity to plan their liberation. They mapped out an escape strategy, leveraging their knowledge of the facility and their collective strength. With the media spotlight shining on their plight, the detainees' story gained unprecedented traction. The online movement they had sparked evolved into a public outcry for answers and justice. The captors found themselves on the defensive, grappling with the consequences of their actions and the power of social media to amplify a message. The harrowing story of Melissa and her fellow detainees became a cautionary tale for the world. It underscored the power of social media to bring hidden truths to light and expose covert operations. As the narrative unfolded, society was reminded of the far-reaching consequences of actions taken in the digital realm. Upon their liberation, Melissa and the other detainees faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives. The survivors' revelations about the government's covert operations sent shockwaves through society. The stark reality of such manipulative tactics was chilling, forcing people to confront the unsettling intersection of government power and online influence. The world had unwittingly become a part of this experiment, and it left a lasting impact. For Melissa, the experience had forever altered her life. The once carefree social media influencer now navigated the online world with trepidation. She channeled her platform into advocacy, spreading awareness about responsible online behavior and the dangers of misinformation. As the survivors regrouped, they realized the gravity of their shared mission. They were determined to hold those responsible for their ordeal accountable, demanding transparency and justice. Melissa's story had evolved from a cryptic abduction into a powerful narrative of resilience, exposure, and the triumph of truth. Her journey, along with her fellow survivors, highlighted the power of collective action in the digital age. As society grappled with the aftermath, the story's conclusion marked the beginning of a more vigilant and accountable era in the world of social media.